Welcome to the Saturday Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Daily. On today's show, we're talking NBA Cup aftermath, Defensive Player of the Year odds, and Scott Agnes joins the show to talk about the Indiana Pacers. But to start us off, Al, tell me about the top stories this week.
Well, Andrew, our top story this week was the crowning of the 2024 NBA Cup champion, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks were led by two-time NBA MVP and one-time NBA Cup MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who put up a 26-19-10 line with 3 blocks in the 97-81 win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's right, 97-81. The Thunder shot 34% from the field and 15% from 3. The last time OKC had that bad of a game, me and Andrew were arguing about whether Aleksej Pokusevski would be a Hall of Famer or just a multi-time All-Star. For the Bucks, it wasn't just another memorable elimination game performance for Giannis. It was also the second NBA Cup championship for summer free agent signing Taurean Prince and assistant coach Darvin Ham. Will we get a Ham Man three-peat next season? Speaking of three-peats, the Chicago Bulls have won 3 in a row, including a shocker on Thursday night, a 117-108 win over the Celtics in Boston. After losing only 4 home games all of last season, the Celtics have already lost 4 this season, and it's not even Christmas. Zach LaVine led the Bulls with 36 points, another strong performance in what has been a bounce-back season for him. Could that bounce-back lead to a trade? Well, this week, The Athletic's Sam Amick reported that the Denver Nuggets have expressed significant interest in LaVine, a deal that would likely involve Michael Porter Jr. In the meantime, the Bulls are now 13-15, 9th in the East, with the 12th-ranked offense and 23rd-ranked defense per Cleaning the Glass. Now, potential trades are fun, but what about real trades? Well, we had 2 this week. First, kind of a minor one in Indiana, as the Pacers sent a 2031 second-round pick swap to the Heat for Thomas Bryant. Not super exciting. A second, more exciting trade, though, followed with the Golden State Warriors sending DeAnthony Melton, Reese Beekman, and 3 second-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets for Dennis Schroeder and a 2025 second. Now, the Warriors are in need of some offensive help in those non-Steph minutes, and also just in need of help more generally, because since starting 12-3, the Warriors have lost 11 of their last 13, including a 144-93 destruction at the hands of the Grizzlies in Memphis on Thursday night. The 51-point loss was the 5th biggest loss in Warriors franchise history. And in his first game as a Warrior, Dennis Schroeder did get the start, but he went 2 of 12 for 5 points. The Grizzlies, meanwhile, are 19-9, second in the West. Now, in a week without many basketball games and not a lot to talk about, it was a particularly bad time to publicly steal a PlayStation 5 from a child, but that's exactly what the Charlotte Hornets decided to do.
So glad you're bringing this up.
During a loss to the Sixers, Hugo the Hornet, dressed as Santa Claus, a character best known for giving presents and not committing theft, gave a child a PS5. Shortly after the child had exited the court, the PS5 was taken away and replaced with a jersey that cannot play video games, such as the 2024 Game of the Year Balatro. I love Balatro. Anytime you hear Andrew talking on the podcast, I'm playing Balatro. The Hornets were widely criticized, and in response have pledged to give the kid a PS5 and a VIP experience to a future Hornets game. The Hornets have lost 13 of their last 15. From a franchise acting like they're broke to a franchise showing how easy it is to get fans to like you, Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia announced this week that the Suns would be implementing a $2 value menu. For just $2, you'll be able to buy a hot dog, a water, a soda, a bag of chips, or even some popcorn. What a deal. At a time when franchise values are soaring into the multiple billions, it's nice when it doesn't feel like your billionaire owner is trying to extract every last dollar out of you. Suns fans get to watch the games for free on TV, and then they can enjoy a meal at the game for under $10. The potential downside for Ishbia's plan is a drop in the bucket for the billionaire, and any owner who is not following Ishbia's lead should feel like a loser. We're gonna shame them into it. You got all that money, and you still gotta charge little old me $6 for a ice cold Dasani? Well, guess what, billionaires? When I'm done, I'm filling it up with bathroom water. Free refills, losers. Finally, this week, you got to give the Clippers some credit. who may have weathered this storm without Kawhi better than anyone could have ever expected. After beating Dallas on Thursday without Luka and Kyrie, they moved to 16-12, their first place in the Pacific Division, 6th in the West, and more importantly, we got news this week that Kawhi is back to playing 5-on-5 contact basketball, and while he has been ruled out of this current road trip, his return may be sooner than later, which is great news for the Clippers. Now, one player who won't be returning soon is rookie Jared McCain, who underwent surgery this week for a torn meniscus. And to make matters worse for the Sixers, Joel Embiid suffered a sinus fracture this week after being hit in the face by Bennett Mathurin. Derek Bodner posted a wild stat. From a 2020 study he found, there have been 53 facial fractures in the NBA over the previous 34 years, which includes 15 orbital bone fractures and 1 sinus fracture. Embiid, all on his own, has now had 2 orbital bone fractures and 1 sinus fracture since 2018. The freakiest run of freak injuries we've ever seen. Now, the good news is that as of Friday morning, Joel Embiid is already questionable for the game against Charlotte, so he should be back soon. And those are the top stories this week, Andrew.
Wonderful top stories. I love that you threw the concession one in there. I thought that was, that was kind of a fascinating story. This week, the BetMGM line of the week is the Defensive Player of the Year odds, which I think are strange. I would say Victor Wembanyama is at a minus 250 to win this award. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. goes all the way up to plus 450. Evan Mobley plus 1,800. Rudy Gobert plus 2,500. Draymond Green plus 2,500. You get to Shea, and the Thunder have the number 1 defense in the NBA. He's plus 2,500. And honestly, him having the best odds to win this award is laughable. Shea is a really good defender, but him having the best odds to win this on the best defense in the NBA is ludicrous. Lou Dort is plus 3,500 as well as Jalen Suggs and Bam Adebayo. I just don't know. I think people preseason had decided that like Victor Wembanyama was going to be the guy to win it. Right now, the Spurs are 19th in defense. Like, I just don't know how you can justify giving somebody the Defensive Player of the Year awards who has a bottom 11 defense in the NBA. I just don't know how you do that when this award has been given to Rudy Gobert, Jaren Jackson, Marcus Smart, Rudy Gobert, again when he was with Utah, Giannis, Rudy, Draymond Green, Kawhi Leonard twice in a row. Like, all these guys played for top flight defenses in the NBA. And I know that Wemby's stats are great. I know the on-offs are incredible, but I just don't know how at the end of the day you're going to give this to him. And maybe it's because there's not a lot of buzz about this award and no one's really come out and said who they think it should be. But I think it's just really interesting that he is like the placeholder for this award when his team is not having the success on the court.
Yeah, it has gotten more interesting because, I'm looking at PBP stats right now. When he's on the court, the Spurs defensive rating is a 110, which is solid. But like, if you're looking at the league as a whole, that would slot in around the 7th best defense in the league. So it's not like they've been some uber elite defense when he's on the court. Now, on the other hand, last Friday night, I got to go watch Victor Wembanyama in person for the first time. And like seeing him in person, I had a great seat. Shout out to Blake for the great seats. It really is wild what
He's
he
breathtaking.
does.
He's
defensively.
Breathtaking. Yeah,
like
he is.
The way he changes the calculus for the other team on defense is fun. And you saw it on. I don't know if you saw this clip on Thursday night in the game against the Hawks where Trae Young shot a floater over the back of the backboard just to try to avoid Wemby.
Yes.
So, like, I get it from that perspective, but I do feel like by the end of the season, the stats, even if it's not a team-wide stat, but the stats with him on the court should be absolutely elite for him to win this award if they are really hovering around like the 20th best defense. Like, when he's on the court, they need to be obviously the best defense in the league for me to really buy into this idea. Like, I get it when I'm watching him, but at the same time, like a 110 defensive rating, like that's cool. That's cool. But I don't feel like that is like, okay, automatic. He should be a minus 250 to win this award. But it does feel like that's where this is headed. Going back to the preseason. Now, I do think, if Chet had stayed healthy, like we even saw it in those first couple of games, his odds were climbing. They were getting a lot closer to each other. Maybe that would have been more of a race, but as much as a player like Jaren Jackson Jr. might end up deserving it, if the Grizzlies end up being a top 5 defense, it's just hard to imagine him getting the award at this point because Wemby feels like such a foregone conclusion.
It better not be a foregone conclusion. Memphis is 5th in defense right now. Like he's a worthy candidate. So is Jalen Suggs and Luguentz Dort, but they don't get the credit because they're guards for some reason. Like the Marcus Smart one was the anomaly, but like Dort and Suggs have been 2 of the best defenders in the NBA this season. And I think they should get a lot more credit. Also, there's no rep from the Houston Rockets, who have the number 2 defense. That to me, it's a little bit crazy because defense is not, this is an individual award. It's not really, defense is tough to evaluate because it's not an individual thing. It's based on scheme. It's based on whatever's going on. And I think that it's easier to give it to a big man because they have these stats that look good. But when we're talking about the best defenders in the NBA, in my opinion, it should be Jalen Suggs and it should be Luguentz Dort at the top of this because they have, to me, those are the 2 guys having the best defensive years in the league. If you're going to give it to a big, give it to Jaren. Like that would be the guy, or even Evan Mobley would be fine with me. But to say that and Victor Wembanyama is going to have his time. The Spurs are going to eventually be a good team, but let's not pretend that he's having the best season of any of these guys because the team stats should dictate what happens here. And
or even just the on stats, like when this player is on the court.
Give me that.
All those players you just mentioned, because I've been looking it up as you've been talking, whether it's Suggs, Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., all of those teams have a better defensive rating when those players are on the court than the Spurs do when Wemby's on the court. So I get the eye test argument because I saw it for myself, but I would like to see the stats catch up a little bit to that.
Yeah.
Because you could never say that about Gobert. Like when Gobert was on the court for these last couple seasons when he was winning Defensive Player of the Year awards, they were always an elite defense.
It was overwhelming. So I think that, yes, he's going to have his day because he is that good. But don't give it to him just because you think because you want to be early. That's what this feels like. It's like, let's get early to the Wemby party. And you're going to leave guys that are actually Defensive Player of the Years in the dust because you want to be early on somebody. That to me should not happen. I don't like that.
I didn't know you were so passionate about this.
I just don't like it, man. I just don't like it.
Well, this is exciting. Okay, it's now time for our favorites of the week, Andrew. Starting off with our favorite quote. And for me, the NBA officially announced their new All-Star game format. They're doing 4 teams, 8 players each, 3 teams of All-Stars, 1 team of Rising Stars. Chuck, Kenny, Shaq, and Candace Parker are the coaches. Personally, I'm excited. I will say that this format for the Rising Stars games has made it much more interesting to me to watch. Now, the NBA chose this week of the NBA Cup to make the announcement, maybe trying to generate a little buzz, get people talking. Well, within minutes of the announcement, Kevin Durant was asked about the changes and said, quote, "I hate it. I absolutely hate it." Now, listen, that's not a good quote. It shouldn't be my favorite. In fact, it's a bad quote. He shouldn't have said it. But it did make me laugh because you could not script a worse rollout for this league. And it just kind of summed up this current funk the NBA is in, where they just can't seem to do anything right. They can't get out of their own way. The story, no matter what it is always going to skew negative. And usually the negativity is coming from inside the house. So it did make me laugh, though. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It's just so direct and explicit. He's not even like beating around the bush at all.
Nope. It's funny to me that it's a funny strategy to use because I don't think it's going to necessarily get them what they want. It's like you like having a cake that you're like, this cake, we know this cake is not good. It's not going to good. But what if we cut it into smaller pieces and then gave you the cake? Would you like it then? Still not going to like the cake. These guys still aren't going to try. They're obviously not going to try again. It's like, why are we... I don't know. I just say, have the game, just play it. Who cares? I don't think anybody is sitting down and being like, man, just hate this All-Star game. It's mostly media and it's mostly the players. I don't think anybody else cares. I really don't.
I will say, though, the whole idea with the Elam ending was that, okay, even if this game sucks, we will get a game-winning shot. We will guarantee a game-winning shot. Now they have guaranteed multiple game-winning shots, and I bet at least one of those is genuinely interesting to watch. Like one of those shots will be a close game, and it will be cool. So I get the calculus of, can we rig this to at least generate more moments? Because that's ultimately all this is going to be. The All-Star game is a series of highlights for most people. And so I do think this will generate more highlights. And for that reason, it's a good idea. But Kevin Durant hates it, absolutely hates it.
That's really funny. It's really funny. I have a couple quotes. I just thought this was really funny from Mark Daignault last night. He's been pretty frustrated with the lack of foul calls that J-Dub has gotten for the Thunder all season. And then last night, he was talking to the media after the game, and he said, here's a stat. Jalen Williams and I both had the same amount of free throws tonight. We both shot 0. And all I did was call a couple timeouts, called some plays, clapped a couple times, and when we scored, and he was in the throat of the defense for 48 minutes. I just thought that was just really funny. It's like a boiling point for him and for the team. And I get it. Like Jalen does generate a lot of contact, and because he's so strong sometimes, like he just doesn't look like he's taking on the contact, and so he doesn't get the calls. And so I just wonder if it's going to end up making him a more of a complainer, and then people won't like him as much because he's going to have to complain to get the calls. It's just something I'm monitoring because he stayed after the game to talk to the officials about it last night in Orlando. So just something to monitor with him because he's just an outrageously likable guy. But I just wonder if the officiating is going to force him to be less likable because of that. My next one, this is just a fun one. If you've been watching games and you see these coaches' challenges, there are some officials that are very bland about it. There are some that like don't quite know what to say when they get up there, and they kind of fumble over their words a little bit. But there's one that stands above the rest, and that's Bill Kennedy. And he is so funny. He had this one Thursday night at the Kings game, and I just want to share it with you guys. I just hope that you enjoy the stylings of Bill Kennedy at the mic.
After reviewing the play, the defensive foul that was called on number 23 has been overturned. Unfortunately, the foul is now on number 9, and the Lakers will retain possession of the ball on the side. The coach's challenge is successful.
He is so funny to me. He does dramatic pauses to let the crowd boo. He's like, unfortunately, the foul call was on number 9. Like, he is just so funny about it, and I think he's the best in the league at this. There's nobody better than Bill Kennedy at this, and I think he deserves some credit here because he just continues to show up and uses it as a way to perform. And there's no doubt about it. You see it across the NBA all the time. It's getting shared on Twitter and on Reddit and everything. But I just had to mention it because I love any time that there's a challenge and Bill Kennedy's the one to step up to the mic. You know you're getting more entertainment. So shout out Bill Kennedy on not just that particular one, but almost every one that he does is very funny.
So that brings us to our favorite stat this week. And for me, I'm going to Charlotte and looking at LaMelo Ball's usage. Now, I knew he was having a crazy statistical season. He's averaging 30 points per game, but I didn't realize how much he is doing this season. His usage percentage is 39.3%. Now, that is the highest in the league. It is also the third highest ever. The only two players who have ever had higher usage percentages were James Harden and Russell Westbrook, and those guys only did it once. He's taking 24.4 shots per game. The last time someone did that was Harden in 18-19, and before that, it was Kobe in 05-06.
Oh,
now,
no.
Isn't that wild? Now
that's the Smush Parker Lakers too. I mean, come on.
I know, and I remember that as like a bad season, and I went back and they still won like 45 games.
Kobe was just that good. Shout out Chris Mim.
This LaMelo season, I don't think is going to be as memorable as those seasons because the Hornets are 7-20. But what LaMelo's doing in Charlotte does deserve to be mentioned because it is wild. I mean, his previous points per game high was like 23 or 24 points, and he's up to 30 points per game. And it's really interesting if you go look at some of his play type data. Like he's taking he's double the amount of isolation possessions that he's ever taken in his career. He's not very good at them either. He's actually pretty inefficient on isolations. But just every play type is more than he's ever done before. And I just didn't realize that was going on in Charlotte.
My stat is just honestly looking at the box score from this Golden State Warriors game, and specifically just looking at Golden State's box score. It looks like a first quarter box score, honestly. Like it just is insane that this was like an entire game. Steph Curry did not make a field goal, 0 of 7 from the field, ended up with 2 points. Draymond Green did not make a field goal. He was 0 of 4 in this game. Dennis Schroeder did get the start. Kuminga is coming off the bench again. I guess the Kuminga era is over as a starter. I don't know. It's just a goofy box score to look at. And this came from Reddit. The last time that Steph was held without a field goal, March 8th, 2018, he played 2 minutes and 23 seconds. March 11th, 2012, he played 9 minutes and 13 seconds. And then February 29th, 2012, he played only 3 seconds in the game. So this was just a very, very odd performance from a team that had some rest. They had like the energy of a new guy coming in, and Dennis Schroeder, and they laid about the craziest egg that you could think of. And then at the end of the game, did you see Brandon Podziemski go for the layup at the end of the game, which gave Podziemski a career high 21 points? It pulled him within 51. It was just a like bizarre move. It's like even if you knew you were doing that to get your career high, don't do it in that game, because now it just becomes like this memory in everybody's mind about you as a player. It's just strange. Like the whole night was strange. All the stats were strange. Just bizarre. Just a bizarre game that I don't think anybody really expected.
Andrew, it wouldn't have been a memory if you would just shut up about it, okay? Brandon Podziemski, he could have had his career high if you would just stop talking about it.
I will never forget. Podziemski, who like went for the layups, like to pull within 51. Podziemski. It's bizarre. Just a bizarre game.
And shout out to Reddit user Gridiron K for that Steph stat.
That's right. Shout out Gridiron K.
Next up, our favorite player this week. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this player off the court. Wondering where he's going to go, how much money he should make, whether he's worth it at his age. But for one night, forgot all about those things and just watched Jimmy Butler have a crazy game against Detroit. His final line, 35, 19, and 10 with 4 steals in 44 minutes. The Heat were down 16. The only reason this game was still on my screen was because YouTube TV has that multi-view. Otherwise, I would have turned it off. The Heat were down 16 with 5.5 minutes left in this game. Jimmy and Tyler Hero bring them all the way back. They force overtime. They get up by 6 in overtime, and then they eventually lose to a Tim Hardaway Jr. heater. I think he hit 3 threes in a row. It was an incredibly fun game as a neutral observer. I would have been going crazy as a fan of either of those teams.
Oh my gosh.
But it was also a great reminder of how dominant Jimmy Butler can still be. He is still so good. When it is peak Jimmy is still very good.
Yeah, Jimmy is a really good player that if they do end up trading him is going to help somebody immensely in the playoffs. I'm just like, can he just stay in the Eastern Conference? Like all the teams he wants to go to are out west, and it's just, man, like, can we not already see that this is a little imbalanced, and now we want to send Jimmy Butler to the Western Conference and him be in the playoffs in the West? It's just, to me, it just is insane. Like, stay out east, just stay with Miami, Jimmy. Mine is Giannis. I mean, just what a performance at the Cup for Giannis. You know, he had 32, 14, and 9 with a steal and 4 blocks against Atlanta, just dominant. And then against OKC, he had 26, 19, and 10 with 2 steals and 3 blocks, and was just the comparisons to Shaq happen, and like you just can't help but talk about it when you're sitting there watching him in person just annihilate these guys. Particularly his spin move looks faster than ever to me. There's just no way to stop him. You're either going to foul him and he's going to get an and one because he's so fast, or he's just going to score. You almost have, those are your two choices. It's like, do you just let him score, or do you try to stop him and let him get the and one when he's on that spin? It's just unbelievable watching this guy. And the thing to me that really stuck out in that game, and Zena did a really good job pointing this out on the NBA Daily, was just the passing. Because the Thunder were ready to form a wall to keep him from getting into the paint. And it was the secondary playmaking that would happen that just really changed the game. And to me, I think that he looks like the best player in the world right now on a team that's really good. I know Jokic is having a great season. I think Giannis does not get the credit that he deserves a lot of times. And he clearly is on a mission, and he looks like a better player. Eric Name has talked about the improvement as a mid-range shooter for him, and just his continued improved mentality. And the guy is just an absolute monster. And I think that he doesn't quite get the credit he deserves just because he has suffered injuries that have happened around the playoffs, and it just makes you kind of forget him. But if he can stay healthy, and I hope he does, just because I want some battles in the Eastern Conference and not just the Celtics mowing through the Eastern Conference again. Like, let's get some battles. Let's let Giannis battle with the Celtics, because he's a real problem. And I just don't know. I don't know who is like a good defensive matchup for him. He is just an absolute beast. And when he's passing and hitting his midi like that, I just don't know how you stop the guy. So my guy is Giannis for sure.
Yeah, give us healthy Bucks, because it's been a minute in the playoffs. Healthy Bucks.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, our favorite moment this week, and for me, it's not one single moment, but this was a really fun Russell Westbrook week. I didn't know if we'd get fun Westbrook weeks like this ever again. He got a standing ovation from Nuggets fans late in the Clippers game when he checked out after a steal and emphatic dunk that put an exclamation point on that win. He put up 18, 9, and 10 as a starter against the Kings on 8 of 13 shooting in what was probably his best all-around game this season. And then in the loss to the Blazers on Thursday night, he puts up 19, 4, and 7 on 8 of 12 shooting. Now, granted, he was the defender on a shot you're about to talk about, so it's not like it was a perfect week. But Ricky O'Donnell wrote a great article about Russ on SB Nation titled, "Russell Westbrook is writing a perfect closing chapter with the Nuggets." It's all about the little things Russ is doing to provide value for the Nuggets this season. And I'm obviously biased as a Thunder fan, but it was just nice to see him have a week like this at this point in his career, because it's hard not to root for a guy who plays with this much energy.
Yeah, he was not the problem for the Nuggets last night. I can tell you that. He certainly was not. My key moment was the end of that game. It was weird because it's a game that we have all seen before many times, but it just didn't play out in the way that it typically does. The Nuggets were down 17 going into the fourth quarter, and they rallied. And there was a point where they were up by 2 after this big time block from Russ, and then an MPJ dunk at the other end, and they went up 2, and that's a moment in a game, because I think we're under a minute now, and you just think, okay, this is when the Nuggets just take hold of the game. And the Nuggets themselves have done this many times this season, where it's a team that's inferior to them. They let them get this big lead, and then they fight back and they win the game at the end. This happens all the time with the Nuggets, and this one did not go their way. And Shaedon Sharpe hit 2 free throws that tied it up, and then just the shot from Simons there was really tough. Like on the move, almost in the mid-range, bank shot, moving toward out of bounds. And it was just a tough shot, like right at the buzzer too. A lot of these shots are not like at the buzzer, necessarily. And so to see him hit that shot like right at the buzzer, Denver outscored Portland 37-22 in the fourth quarter. It just felt like all momentum was just crushed for the Portland Trail Blazers. And credit to Anthony Simons, he's a really good player, having a pretty good scoring season, and a guy that I don't know if the Blazers want to build around him or not, but if he was somehow, and I don't know if this is the role that he would necessarily want, but if he was like some scoring guard off the bench for a really good team, like he could help a team win a championship. Like he's that good of a scorer. I don't know if he wants to take that role or not, but Simons is a really, really nice player, and he showed even in that moment that he can go create. And Russ had been good defensively. I know that Russ has not been a good defender, or at least known as a good defender, but he contested that well. It was just a better offensive play from Simons. And so that was just a wild moment last night.
Yeah, Simons, he's frustrating to me because a couple of years ago when he had that run in January where he was just like unconscious and he was so good. And I just feel like he's never quite gotten back to that. And this year, the issue has been his 3-point shooting. Like it's just down. He's shooting 33% on high volume, on really good volume, after shooting, 39% last year, 38% the year before, 41% the year before. So if he can get that shooting back to where it was, I think we'll start seeing him. Like he's averaging 17.7 points per game this year, which for him is down. Like last year, he averaged almost 23 points per game. And on this Blazers team, he should absolutely be back up there. And I think if his 3-point shooting comes back around, he will get back up there by the end of the season. But yeah, he's just been a frustrating player for me because I keep wanting to see like the next step from Anthony Simons, and it just hasn't totally happened yet. And maybe it won't happen with the Blazers. Maybe, like you said, it'll happen on, if he gets traded on another team. I really like him though as an offensive player.
He's a great player. I just think that he may be in an outsized role, which is like not that big of a deal. It happens to players all the time that are in these kinds of situations. And if he can just find the right role and the right team for him, I think that he could really flourish. So I'd be interested to see where his career goes. Something else that I'm interested in is the Indiana Pacers, and we're going to talk about them with Scott Agnes right after this quick break.
All right, Andrew, it is time for the Wheel of Fandom, the weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. And last week, the wheel landed on the Indiana Pacers, who broke the Wheel of Fandom curse. They won all 3 of their games this week against Philly, New Orleans, and Phoenix. They have won 4 of their last 5. Don't ask who the one loss was to. And now are 13-15, 8th in the East. According to Cleaning the Glass, the Pacers have the 14th ranked offense and 23rd ranked defense. Andrew, if our favorite team is the Pacers, who is our guest?
It's Scott Agnes. You can find him at the Fieldhouse Files Substack. He also has a podcast. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, guys. Good to be on with you.
So after losing 4 in a row in early December, the Pacers have now won 4 of 5, including that really impressive road win against the Suns. Does it feel like this team has finally broken out of this early season funk after like having some of like the biggest improvements during this current stretch?
For sure, because there was a lot going on, even going back to really training camp and then leading into the first game of the season where in his first 5-minute stint, James Wiseman, who may have been your backup center this season from third string, ruptures his Achilles. And then 10 days later, your true backup center and Isaiah Jackson suffers an Achilles. I don't think this team has had more than 1 Achilles that I know of in like the last 15 years. And to have 2 in the first 10 days of the season, that is complete shock right there. Then it's almost like a trickle-down effect, or like it becomes contagious. I don't know. But their top 3 wing defenders, and they're not a great defensive team as it is, their top 3 wing defenders suffer injuries, and so now they have a big setback there. Compound that with their start of the schedule, which was road heavy for most part. Now, though, we're going to get right now is the true barometer, Andrew. Right now, we're really going to have a feel for this team after the next 3 weeks. They're on a road trip right now before Christmas, go back out on the road, come home for a couple playoff teams. So we'll know exactly where this team is and how they are doing probably by about January 8th or 10th.
You mentioned the backup centers, and the Pacers did make a trade this week to get Thomas Bryant. He only played 5 minutes in the game against the Suns. Are you expecting him to have a like kind of traditional backup center role on this team, or do you think he'll maybe just be more of like an end of a bench guy?
No, I do expect him to be a backup center because they didn't have that. They only had Miles Turner, which some would even argue he's not even a traditional center, right? He's playing more away from the basket. He's not a great rebounder. He's become a better rebounder, and that's probably the biggest flaw, if you simplify it, is this team is not a good rebounding team. Secondly, though, it's probably defense, and that's what it's been probably for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, they've gotten better. You alluded to the fact they're ranked 23rd in defensive rating right now. I think like 10 days ago, they were 29th. So they have been much better over these last couple of weeks. I think correlating with that fact is Andrew Nembhard, the guard coming back, and he's been such an influence already. He's not a guy that's going to put up the numbers or have the double-doubles or a 30-point night necessarily. Now, in his rookie year, we saw what he did, a game-winning shot against the Lakers, and I think he did have like a big performance in Golden State, which is notable because they're playing in Golden State next week. But Andrew Nembhard's return's probably been the biggest factor in their recent success. And then to the greater point here, I think they've done a much better job now of starting to settle in, get a little bit more comfortable with what they are.
Yeah, that defense. So I'm looking at cleaning the glass. In the last 2 weeks over this 4-1 period, they've been the 9th ranked defense.
Yeah.
So that's definitely helped them jump up. So Tyrese Haliburton, he has been a story through the early season. Even as he's been finding more consistency, it's hard not to think about the player he was at the beginning of the last season. I was wondering how you think about that stretch now. Like, is your expectation that he's eventually going to get back to that level?
I think to an extent. The challenge is back then, right? They were flying under the radar, both as a team and as a player. What we're seeing more so now is teams scheming against it, especially this physicality that everybody is talking about. Tyrese hadn't complained about it. He says, I love basketball, so this is good for the game. Rick stood up on his behalf and saying, hey, look, I'm trying to get a technical out there certain games because, this team is out here swarming him from half court where he can't even move. Like, it's like a defensive end is all over him, not able to get the ball. And again, to reference Andrew Nembhard, him returning to the lineup helps alleviate that stress and pressure for him to be the only ball handler other than TJ McConnell primarily when he's out there. But you go back to what's working right now, I think a lot of it is Tyrese clicking a little bit, and they've had multiple instances here in the last 2 weeks, which I think is a big factor of having 3 and 4 days between games, right? We just had that with the NBA Cup, and Tyrese, for the most part, has not really had significant time off for the last 2 years. That's a big factor that I always try to emphasize. He played with the USA World Cup team, went right into the magical season last year, felt pressure all season long, not just to show up for his team, but for himself by playing the 65 games and eventually qualifying for All-NBA. And he later, after the fact, admitted, yeah, of course, I was not going to miss as many games as I needed to. I was going to make sure I got those 65 games in. Well, he had that hamstring injury in January. Then he had another injury in the playoffs that kept him out of the final 2 conference finals games. Then he had a couple more injuries during Team USA and his training to get ready for this season. So he has not been completely healthy and therefore also didn't have a beneficial offseason, I'd argue, right? Like where you're working on your game, where you're balancing rest with working on things that maybe counters to how teams are defending you. So Tyrese clicking has been significant, and yes, I do think he'll get back to more of what he was. But I think you add Pascal Siakam into the equation, and he's kind of that best player at the moment.
I'm interested in what you think about Benedict Mathurin. He's always been a productive player, but last season people seemed to sour on him a bit, and part of the on-off numbers and all of that looked pretty bad. In this season, however, the Pacers have been good in his minutes, his efficiency, scoring, even his rebounding is up quite a bit. Where have you seen his biggest improvements from last year to this year?
Yeah, so he's been the one benefactor of all those wings being out because he would have been playing off the bench. But instead here, he's now getting the starting role and starting minutes. And so, first of all, I think, Andrew, the number one thing has been his rebounding. Many games now, he's chasing after almost stealing rebounds like we previously saw here several years ago with Lance Stevenson. And Ben would just go get him. And you can tell that it's been said, but you can also visibly tell that's been one of the things that the coaching points have made a point on. The other thing is, I think, his vision and utilizing that vision has been much improved. He's used to being the best player out on the floor. He's used to being the focal player who can put his head down, drive to the basket, lay it in. Well, oftentimes the best is just moving it around the perimeter, just keeping the ball moving. And so I think some of his passes and his vision and just utilizing it, it's always been there. I just don't think he's ever went to it, has been the other thing. And all along, he continues to be kind of the best player on this roster, getting to the basket, drawing contact, and getting to the foul line.
So, Scott, it's that time of year where every fan base starts making fake trades, and I'm assuming Pacers fans are no different. You kind of alluded to it earlier, but what player archetypes would you be looking for when you're thinking about potential trade targets for the Pacers?
This is easy. It's the most coveted position, 6'8" wing. That's what they need. They need a Paul George.
Okay, well, that's easy.
It makes it easy for Pacer fans, so I continue to reference it. But that's the type of guy, a two-way player
Paul George
who
reference.
can do a little bit of everything.
Okay. Is there anyone, like, has Pacers fans thrown out any names that seem like semi-realistic?
Not in particular.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a running joke that whoever you play that is probably a 6'8" wing is going to go off. So, it's Scotty Barnes one night and Kevin Durant the other night. And I mean, he's obviously taller, but at least 6'8". Those guys have tremendous success. So also that's why they struggle with the more quote unquote modern teams like Toronto, Orlando, who has just full of size and athleticism and length. They give the Pacers all kinds of fits for that reason. So filling in that gap at the 3 spot would be their number one focus.
So Alex and I were both fans of Jarace Walker during the draft process, like a lot of people were. And we've been a little surprised at how few minutes that he's gotten, or at least the few minutes he got his rookie season. But he's played a little bit more this season. What have been your impressions of his game and where he's at?
Yeah, I would say offensively come along better than I thought to this point, especially his 3-point shot. So last year, the challenge in all this is he was drafted to fill a need. And then 1 month later, they acquired Obi Toppin. And 6 months later, they acquired Pascal Siakam. Those two guys obviously fill in the 4 spot. So here's this 19-year-old rookie who has a lot to learn, who played in a very different system under Kelvin Sampson at Houston that required much different things of him. And he acknowledged there was a steep learning curve in trying to break old habits, especially what he could do defensively at Houston versus what the Pacers are trying to impress upon him and force them to do and all those sorts of things. So defensively, I think I expected more and I've gotten less. And offensively, conversely, I think that's where he really benefited in particular from his significant time last year in the G League, is he didn't hesitate from 3. And now he's shooting, I think, about 40% from distance. But you would like to see more from him, demand more from him. And the hope coming into this season, guys, was, okay, we know there's not many minutes at the 4 spot. Starting at Summer League, they tried him at the 3 spot and said going into this season, for you to get on the floor, you're probably going to have to play more at the 3 because that's the spot of need, right? And so that was one of his emphasis for the first couple of months leading into training camp.
Have there been any signs that he could potentially fill that role defensively in terms of guarding those big wings?
Not specifically, no. I would say there's bright points, but as many as of those there's also some questionable, like, what do you do? What, you're in the wrong spot, or you didn't follow your man, and little things like that. So I don't think there's anything convincing one way or another, which probably speaks to his lack of experience and his age a little bit. And again, like Mathurin, he benefited from these early minutes that were made available due to injury. I will mention too here, going into any season here in the last probably decade, the one position the Pacers had not had to worry about was center. And so it's notable that this season that's probably been their biggest issue because of the injuries. But here's why it's even more notable. Isaiah Jackson, who suffered that Achilles injury, he's in a contract year. They didn't have an agreement coming off his rookie extension. Secondly, Miles Turner, they could not, by CBA rules, negotiate at all. So that window has to wait till free agency after he did a renegotiation and extend over like a year and a half ago. So the Pacers will enter free agency without a center under their on their roster, which is different from, when Pacer fans were like, do we really want to see Turner and Sabonis? And because of that several years ago, neither player was really able to maximize their efforts. So that's something I'm significantly watching here in the next 6 months as well. Because also, if you're in this position and you don't want to bring back Miles, or maybe you can't afford him because the luxury tax is maybe something else we need to get into, then you would trade off that player. But right now, they don't have that benefit right now just due to health and youth.
Yeah, what are the expectations for a potential contract for Miles Turner? Because I feel like for so long, for every other fan base, he's been that unicorn type that feels gettable, and this is the first time when he's actually going to be like an unrestricted free agent, right? Anyone could go after him. Is your expectation that he's going to get paid a lot by the Pacers just because he is so unique?
Well, here's the challenge in that. They are right up against the luxury tax. Now, that's where, if anything, I could see them making moves is to offload a contract or two, because the Pacers front office essentially chose to run it back this season. They liked what they saw last year. Obviously, the team had success. I call it a little bit of fool's gold, though, given the injuries, but they definitely outperformed anybody's expectation. The goal was to get to the playoffs again for the first time in about a half dozen years, and they reached the conference finals. But in terms of Miles, I think this is probably that last significant contract for him. And if you're him, you're probably pushing for 25, 27 million. I think you look at a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who just got that, for example, and they faced him in the playoffs. But if you're the Pacers, you have to have significant reservations giving that much, given your current status, how you're not a contending team right now, how you have 2 max contracts already with Tyrese and Siakam. And on top of that, Haliburton's contract is a super max, which takes another 10 million or so roughly from the availability. So there's no simple equation here. And I'm curious how far the Pacers will be willing to go.
Well, Scott, thank you for answering all of our Pacers questions. It is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, Pacers edition. Now, Andrew versus the Beat, every week we have Andrew go head-to-head against an NBA beat writer. This week, Scott Agnes. Now, Scott, I've come up with 8 questions all about the Pacers. Some are easy, some are hard. You're going to give me a number between 1 and 8, and it'll correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1. Now, we will go back and forth until all questions are asked and answered. So to start us off, I just need a number between 1 and 8.
3.
Question number 3. Indiana is shooting 44.4% on corner threes this season per Cleaning the Glass, which is the second highest percentage in the league. This team in Indiana's division leads the league in corner three percentage at 49.3%. That is the difference between 1 and 2.
Oh, my word.
So, Scott, this is a team in Indiana's division. Yes, it is your question.
I'll take Cleveland.
That is incorrect.
Okay.
Andrew, you have a chance to steal.
Oh, boy. Cleveland was the obvious answer in my brain as well. Chicago?
Andrew? That is also incorrect. The correct answer was the NBA Cup champions, the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, okay.
I hesitated with them, to be clear, just because of they took a while to get going here. So I figure that number wasn't quite there yet.
Wow. I wonder if it's like all Taurine Prince. I didn't actually look it up.
If it's only Taurine Prince.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew, the board is yours.
Number 1.
Question number 1. The Pacers are one of 2 teams to have beaten both teams that appeared in last year's finals. They've already beaten the Celtics and the Mavs. Who is the only other team to have also done that? Beaten the Celtics and the Mavs.
Beaten the Celtics and the Mavs. Oh, boy.
I think Celtics, they got 5 losses?
Yeah.
6 losses. Yeah, I forgot they lost to the Bulls.
Oh.
6 losses.
I'm wondering if I can't remember if this team beat the Mavericks or not. Is it Memphis? I know that Memphis has beaten the Celtics.
I do remember that. But that is not the team, Andrew. Memphis has not beaten Dallas. Scott, do you have any guesses?
I have no idea why they come to mind. Sitting on the brain, maybe because they're such a disruptor for the Pacers, but I say Charlotte.
Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte is definitely a disruptor. That is incorrect. That would be wildly impressive, though. The correct answer is the Golden State Warriors. Back when they were 12-3 once upon a time. Okay, Scott, the board is yours.
Let's just go with 2, please.
Question number 2. The Pacers are taking the highest percentage of their shots from the mid-range since the 2019-20 season. Who led the Pacers in mid-range shots per game in the 2019-20 season?
Oh my gosh, what a question.
Malcolm Brogdon would be my guess.
That is incorrect. Andrew, board is yours.
I don't know. TJ Warren. I don't know.
Yeah.
Andrew, that is absolutely correct. Of course, it was Bubble Warren. Bubble TJ Warren. So you get a point for that. All right. Andrew, the board is yours. And you're on the board with 1 point.
Okay, number 4.
Pascal Siakam's 25 points against the Suns on Thursday night was important for one reason. The Pacers now have a 20-point-per-game scorer, as Siakam crossed the threshold and is now averaging 20.1 points per game. That leaves only 3 NBA teams who do not have any players averaging 20 points per game.
Oh, no.
How many can you name, Andrew? You get 1 point per correct answer.
1 per. Okay. What about Utah?
Utah is 1. That is correct, Andrew.
Okay. I kind of want to stay in the Northwest Division, although I don't know if this team. I can't remember if this player has scored 20 points or not. I'll say the Blazers.
Andrew, that is correct.
Yes. Okay. You say there's one more team?
There's one more team. You could get all 3.
Who doesn't have a bona fide star?
AJ Green is shooting 64% from the corner for Milwaukee.
Oh, well, duh. He's been a monster shooter. He hit that moon ball 3 that was like heavily contested at the cup. That was crazy impressive. What about Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, Andrew? That is incorrect. How could you forget about Cam Thomas, Andrew?
Oh, how could I? Dang it.
How could you forget? Scott, do you have any guesses for the last team?
That's so dumb.
My original inclination was New Orleans just because everybody's been in and out of that roster. Has anyone played enough to do 20 points per game? So I'll lean into that.
It's a good guess. This one was the toughest one because it doesn't sound real. It is the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets, they have 2 guys right below Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün.
Interesting.
No one at 20. Okay, Scott, the board is yours.
Okay, let's just go down the list with 5.
Okay, among Pacers who have played at least 20 games this season, which player has the lowest average shot distance? In other words, the average shot this player takes is closer to the basket than any other player on the team.
But has played at least 20 games.
Correct.
Ooh.
Has played 20 games.
That's the hardest part in all this. It's like, otherwise, James Wiseman, like Moses Brown.
Right, Moses Brown.
Moses Brown.
This is great radio. It's got to be a wing, right?
Closest to the basket.
I have no good guess.
Well, you can always just throw out a Pacer.
Yeah.
There's always a chance.
Jarace Walker.
Jarace Walker. He has played 28 games. Let me look up his average shot distance. That is incorrect.
I figured there's no way. Yeah.
He's 16.8 feet. Andrew, what is your guess?
Ben Mathurin?
Ben Mathurin, 12.4 feet. No, this player, his average shot is only from 8 feet away from the basket. It is TJ McConnell.
Oh, duh. That's so bad. Yeah. Everything was layups in those. Yes, that was bad.
Yeah.
God, that rocks. That's amazing.
Yeah, it makes sense when you hear the name. It's like, oh, yes, obviously.
I love that.
Okay, Andrew, the board is yours.
6.
The Pacers traded for Thomas Bryant this week. What is Thomas Bryant's career high in points? Now you get to choose who answers first. You can make Scott answer first, and then you go higher or lower. Or you can answer first, and Scott will go higher or lower.
Okay. I will say 33.
Okay, Andrew has set the bar at 33 points for Thomas Bryant's career high. Scott,
I've been going too low in the past weeks, and I feel now that feels like uncomfortably high, to be honest.
But I always go back to Andrew. There's a reason this question was asked.
Yeah, there you go.
What is the anomaly here? I'll go lower, even though I don't feel good about it.
Andrew, you were within 2 points of the correct answer, and the correct answer was 31, which means Scott gets the point. All right, so it is now 3-1.
Shoot.
Scott, you have control of the board. If you get this next question, you will tie it up.
Well, let's do 7, please.
All right, while Tyrese Haliburton hasn't gotten off to the start he wanted this season, he did have a game against the Pelicans where he hit 9 3-pointers, the third time in his career that he has done that. There are only 2 other Pacers in franchise history who have hit at least 9 threes in a game. Who are they? And you do get 1 point per correct answer.
Paul George for 1.
That is correct. Can you get the other name? And I will say there are a lot of reasonable
There's some interesting.
names.
Yeah, there's some like low hanging fruit here with some of these guys.
There was one massive game I remember CJ Miles going off. I don't think he hit quite this many.
CJ Miles.
Yeah, it was in Washington.
What a pull.
Victor
Yeah.
Oladipo, I don't think he pushed to 9. Is my only hesitation there.
9 is a lot. 9 is a lot of made threes.
Yeah.
I will say there was a big cutoff between 8 and 9. There were like 8 players who had hit 8, but only 3 who
That
had
tracks.
hit 9.
Okay.
Oh, I feel like this just happened in the last few years too. Who am I missing? Let's just go with Victor, I guess.
That is incorrect. Andrew, you have a chance to steal. What name are you going to go with?
Buddy?
Makes a lot of sense, but also wrong. It was actually a name that you mentioned earlier. It was TJ Warren.
Oh, yes. He did have that one.
All right, so the game is 3-2. Andrew, you have to get this last question right to win the game. If Scott
Okay.
gets it right, it will lead to a tie, which will lead to sudden death.
Okay.
Benedict Mathurin is getting back to the line again this season, averaging 5 free throw attempts per game, the second time he's done that in his career. Since 1990, there have only been 9 Pacers to average 5 free throw attempts per game over the course of a season. And we're going to name them all. So how this works, Andrew will give me a name, and then Scott will give me a name. We'll go back and forth till one of you stumbles. So all this player has to do is, over the course of a season, average at least 5 free throw attempts per game.
Okay.
They just had to do it at least once.
Ooh. What about Domas?
Domantas Sabonis, he is on the list, Andrew. Over to Scott.
I would think Reggie did once.
Reggie is on the list. Yes, he did it multiple times, I believe. Andrew.
What about PG?
Paul George. He's on the list, Andrew. Back to Scott.
Danny Granger.
Danny Granger is on the list. Back to Andrew.
Oh, boy.
Now it's getting interesting.
This is getting interesting. What about Victor Oladipo?
Victor Oladipo. Andrew, he is not on the list. Andrew. Scott, do you have any other guesses?
So
Any other
you said
names you wanna
5
throw out
players in total in franchise history?
It's 9, so there's
9.
actually 5 left. There's 5
Oh, okay.
names left. It could be, yeah.
Oh,
if you have
boy.
any other ideas.
Do we go back to ABA? No. Those ABA days were good.
Yeah, this is only since 1990, though.
Oh,
so this
apologies.
is
Yeah. Fair
not
enough.
previous to that.
Just like to give them credit, I guess, right?
Did Jermaine do it?
He had MVP
yes, Jermaine.
season. Yeah.
Jermaine O'Neal is on the list. Any other names you guys want to throw out while I try to come up with a sudden death question?
You said Granger. What about Psycho T?
Psycho T.
Shout out to Tyler Hansborough right there.
No. So the older names, the really older names, Detlef Schrempf
Yep.
did it. Michael
okay.
Williams, which I don't think you would have ever gotten.
I would not have gotten that.
And then did it once, Jeff Teague. And then
Teague.
Jeff Teague did it once. And then the other name, Meta World Peace.
Oh,
Which that one does make
interesting.
sense.
Interesting.
Okay, so that means the score is tied 3-3. So we're going to go into sudden death.
Oh boy. Okay.
And for sudden death, we are going to do the franchise top 10 in most triple doubles. Okay? Franchise top 10 in most triple doubles. And I'm going to let Scott guess first, and then Andrew will guess, and we'll go back and forth.
Oh no, I am not gonna do good in this.
We'll start with Tyrese, obviously.
Tyrese Haliburton. Now, okay, I am going to have to check on this. I wish I hadn't have asked this question now, because the guys who are number 10, there's like 5 of them tied for 2. So I wonder if because he is not on the list, but I wonder if he actually did make the list. So I am talking right now because I'm doing a stat head search, and I'm going to find this out right now. Don't worry, Andrew. It's not going to take any time at all because stat head is always super quick. I'm there. Tyrese Haliburton has only had 1 triple-double in his career, Scott. I am sorry. In his career. So he is not on the top 10 list, which means, Andrew, to win the week, you just need to name 1 Pacer.
One of my favorite Pacers of all time. He surely had 1. I will be so mad at myself. I will not forgive myself the entire weekend if he did not have 1 as a Pacer.
To be clear, he needs to have 2.
Yeah, that's where I messed up. I thought we were doing any Pacer with a triple-double.
I think he had to have had multiple. He had to have had multiple. And I just would love to just hear his name one more time on this podcast, and that's Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson.
Ooh, Lance Stevenson. Lance Stevenson, in his career, had 5 triple-doubles, Andrew. 5 triple-doubles. Congrats on the win. And even more fun than that, he did it all in 1 season. 5 triple-doubles.
Seriously.
In 1 season. Yeah. Now, the franchise leader by a
13-14,
mile,
I think.
It was 13-14, yeah.
All-Star Lance season. Sir Lancelot season.
Sir Lancelot season.
Domantas Sabonis, he had 18. So he is the is the franchise leader by a mile. But 18. Some other guys, Detlef Schrempf, Vern Fleming, of course. Vern, you can't forget about Vern. Mark Jackson, Mickey Johnson, Chuck Person, Jamal Tinsley, Paul George, and TJ McConnell has had 2.
Oh, TJ, man. Go check out Scott's work at the Fieldhouse Files on Substack. Scott, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. This is fun.
All right, Andrew, that was Pacers week, and the Pacers broke the curse. They won all 3 games. Maybe the wheel is turning.
Unreal.
Could be exciting. Now, this next one is going to be a big one this next week because we're not doing a show the week of Christmas, which means whatever team we land on is going to get 2 solid weeks.
They'll actually get 3 weeks because we're gonna do a draft show the week of New Year's. So this is even bigger than you thought, Al.
3 weeks. Okay, I hope I pray that it is a good team, or just interesting. I'm just looking for interesting.
Give me interesting.
Andrew.
Yeah.
Let's see what we get. We're spinning the wheel. Our next Wheel of Fandom team will be the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets. All right.
Oh, boy. 3 weeks of Charlotte Hornets fandom on
Hornets
our plates. Games. Oh, man. That is really funny. That is...
Yeah, the Hornets lost comedy. To their last game. They lost to the Wizards.
Yeah, they did. Oh, I guess good news. It can't get any worse. Maybe.
Hey, they play a game at OKC on the 28th, so you'll be there.
Listen, I'll get to go see them in person.
You get to see them in person. That's exciting.
That's right. That is exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
They play
pretty
Houston.
rare for the wheel.
You know what? They actually got a revenge game against the Wizards the day after Christmas. So that's something to look forward to. Wow, this is actually a pretty nice part of their schedule. They also get to play Chicago.
It's on the road. It's on the road, Al. I don't get to watch them. It's at Charlotte. It's at Charlotte.
Oh, I'm
unfortunately.
So sorry.
I got my hopes up there.
You could fly out there. I've heard Charlotte's a beautiful city. I would love to go to Charlotte.
Would love to go to Charlotte. Would love
Maybe
that.
we should do a little trip together.
We should.
3 days after Christmas, leave our families and go watch the Hornets.
Let's do it. Why are you doing this? Well, it's the wheel of fandom. We're just...
Well, hey, maybe this will be what the Hornets need to get back on track.
Hey.
They've got 3 weeks of wheel helping them, okay?
That's right. Or maybe the wrath of the wheel is back.
Maybe. We're about to find out.
To destroy the Charlotte team. Hey, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. Hey, if you leave it for the NBA Daily as well, we're going to read it on the show because those guys have been doing a phenomenal job. If you were listening to the show while we were in Las Vegas, they just did such a great job of covering the Cup and everything going on there. So please subscribe. Yesterday was a great show with John Krasinski and Jovan Buha. Jovan discussed, trade targets for the Lakers. I thought that was really interesting. The return of Karl Anthony Towns with John, and just like the weirdness with Julius Randle. Really, really good stuff. So be sure to check that out. This one comes from Christoph47511. Just stumbled onto this podcast a few months ago, and I love it. Having a show each morning to look forward to is so much fun. All the hosts are thoughtful and interesting to listen to. Thank you, and go Spurs, go. Thank you so much for leaving that review. Very much appreciate that. Please leave us more 5-star reviews, and we will read them on the show. I got one more from Ty $Cube with a K. 5 stars, phenomenal show, best NBA podcast by far. Great music, great energy, and great league-wide balance. I make it my first listen every day. Thank you so much for those reviews. So if you're not listening to the Athletic NBA Daily every day, it's pretty simple. It's a bite-sized pod in your feed every day. We like to have beat writers from across the country on to kind of give insights on their teams. And, Dave, Zena, and S do a great job. So be sure to check that out. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend and the basketball. Again, we will not be back next week because of Christmas. Have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy the basketball games. And we will talk to you guys again in 2 weeks.